I went to inspect an abandoned house, but under the porch I found a starving dog. She didn't bark, nor did she run away. She looked at me as if she had given up all hope, and behind her, 3 tiny puppies, barely hanging on to life. That moment changed everything. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That's how we continue sharing these unforgettable stories of loyalty, resilience, and the bond between humans and dogs that defy all odds. I'm Caleb, a civil engineer, mostly working on surveying old buildings to plan for demolition. Places like these are usually desolate, eerily silent, but I've grown used to that feeling. Until that morning. The house was located on the western edge of Bakersfield, a once peaceful residential area, now nothing more than a mark on the map. The ground was dry and cracked, with knee-high weeds growing wild, and the rusted tin porch sagging like it was about to collapse. Everything was exactly as reported, ruined, forgotten, without a sign of life. But then, I felt eyes on me. Not the vague sensation you sometimes get, but a cold chill running down my spine, as if someone was watching every step I took on the crooked wooden floor. And when I looked down, beneath the darkness under the porch, I saw her, a German shepherd dog, thin, matted fur, ears drooping. No growling, no whimpering in fear, just lying still, her wide eyes fixed directly on me. It wasn't a look of pleading or fear. It was suspicion, as if she were asking, "Are you the next one who will hurt me?" I stood still, not daring to move a step further. The air grew heavy, filled only with wind whistling through the cracks in the wood and the erratic beating of my heart. I'd never been afraid of dogs, but I'd never seen a look so deep and full of pain. I slowly crouched down, keeping my distance. "Hey, girl," I whispered, unsure if I was trying to reassure her or myself. She didn't react, just slightly lowered her head as if telling me, "I'm guarding something precious. Don't come any closer." And just then, I heard something faint behind her, a soft, intermittent whimper. I leaned in, peering deeper into the shadows, and my heart felt like it fell out of my chest. A small head poked up, then the second, then the third. 3 tiny puppies, shivering. One was resting its head on a crumpled piece of red cloth, maybe a sock, maybe an old shirt. I couldn't tell, but it was the only thing with color in the gray shadow of this dilapidated house. I swallowed hard. No one mentioned anything about dogs in the report. No one could have guessed that under this decaying porch, there was a mother guarding life with her own frail body. I couldn't move forward, couldn't turn away, and I couldn't pull out my phone to call right then. I just sat there, staring, and silently thought, I came here to survey a pile of ruins, but I didn't expect there to be a mother dog and her puppies here. I knelt, trying to lower myself even more so I wouldn't scare her. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt anyone." My voice trembled, though I didn't know why. Maybe because she, skinny, her fur tangled like a mop, looked at me like I was some impossible thing, as if I were a dream she didn't dare believe was real. The weak sunlight filtered through the cracks in the porch roof, and then I saw more clearly 3 puppies, as small as clenched fists. Their eyes were just beginning to open, their pupils still blurry, trembling under their mother's belly. One was curled up on a piece of old cloth, its faded yellow color nearly gone. It could have been a child's shirt, maybe the last thing keeping warmth for them. One of the puppies tried to crawl toward its mother, but its legs were too weak, slipping on the dry ground. I clenched my fists, trying not to let my emotions spill over. I turned my head and ran quickly to the car. My hand trembled as I searched my bag for the leftover sandwich. Just a little cold chicken and bread, not much. I came back, knelt beside the porch, and slowly slid the sandwich through the gap in the rotting floorboards. The dog didn't rush, didn't bite, didn't devour. She looked at it and slowly walked toward the food, not for herself, but for her puppies. She carefully took small pieces and brought them back to the nest, placing them near the mouths of her tiny, softly whimpering pups. There was no howling, no pleading, just the silent, dignified act of a mother swallowing her pain to make sure her babies could live. I couldn't hold it together anymore. I almost whispered to myself, "I'll be back tomorrow. I promise I won't leave you." She didn't nod, didn't leave. She lay down beside her pups, one leg curled protectively around the smallest one, her leg trembling slightly, as if she wanted to shield them from further harm. I turned away slowly, taking one step at a time, afraid that if I walked too fast, my promise would vanish with the wind passing through the porch. I didn't know what I had just walked into, but one thing was certain. I would come back. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of the dog lying still in the dark haunted me, like a shadow in my mind. I woke up before dawn and hurriedly packed some soft dog food, a bottle of clean water, a few cans of goat's milk for puppies, and a towel. When my car turned onto the familiar narrow road, the first light of day touched the broken porch roof of the abandoned house. There was no sound, just the eerie silence. But then I saw her. She was still there, not leaving, not running away. I parked the car, not in a hurry. This time, I didn't bring expectations, but patience. I placed the bag about 3 meters in front of the porch, opened it, poured water into the small plastic bowl, and quietly sat down on the damp grass by the side of the house, where she could see me clearly, but not feel threatened. A few minutes later she stepped out. No sound, no barking, no growling, just one quiet step, then another, as if each step was a test of trust. She didn't look at me, just sniffed the food. After a while, she began eating, slowly and politely, one bite at a time, as if apologizing for letting me see her weakness. And then 3 tiny creatures crawled out of the darkness. I held my breath. They were so small, so skinny. Their fur was covered in dust, their skin thin and visible. One of them slipped and fell, struggling to get up with its tiny leg. Their eyes weren't fully open, but they kept crawling toward their mother, as if just touching her would make all hunger and fear disappear. I was choked up. In that ruined place, there was something silently surviving. That was motherhood. She ate half the bowl and then suddenly looked up at me, not scared, not suspicious. Just a silent, tired gaze, but something softer than yesterday. I didn't dare move, just whispered, "You don't have to trust me right now, but if I come back tomorrow, you'll know I won't leave you." She didn't answer, but when I stood up, I saw what choked me. The smallest, weakest pup had laid its head on the towel I brought. I don't know what it felt, but maybe that was the first time it knew warmth. I returned on the 3rd day with a light-hearted mood. In my mind, I pictured the 3 puppies running toward me when they saw me, and the mother would come forward, no longer cautious. But life is never that simple. I had just exited the car, and a strange feeling crept into my heart before I could call out. There was no sound, no joyful gestures, just a heavy silence that covered the porch. I hurried over and knelt. And then my heart sank. She lay there, eyes open but unfocused, her chest rising and falling rapidly as if struggling for breath. Her body trembled in waves. One leg twitched slightly. Her nose was dry. Her mouth cracked open as if trying to find the last bit of oxygen in the stifling air. I whispered, "Hey, are you still there?" No response. I turned to my phone, searching for keywords. Postpartum, mother-dog, heavy breathing, exhaustion. The result that appeared made me shiver. Exhaustion after giving birth requires immediate emergency care, or it will lead to death within hours. I froze. The 3 puppies were still curled up next to their mother, unaware that the warmth they sought was slowly fading, and I swear, at that moment I saw something sacred, something overwhelming. It wasn't fear, but resignation, as if she knew her time was running out. But as long as her pups survived, she was willing to accept everything. When I returned that afternoon, for the 4th time in less than 3 days, I brought a plastic box lined with soft towels, a bowl of warm chicken broth, and determination. I didn't know what state I'd find her in. I didn't know if I'd make it in time, but I had to go. I stepped out of the car, my heart heavy, walking quickly but not running, afraid of the outcome I didn't dare think about. She was still there. She was still lying by the porch, her body growing more gaunt and frightening. But what left me speechless was what she did next. She didn't look at me for long, didn't try to growl or show any signs. Instead, she slowly lifted her head, gently bit the collar of the first puppy, and pulled it closer to the edge of the porch. I froze. Then she dragged the second one, slowly, with difficulty, but she didn't stop. The last one, the smallest, the weakest, was placed near me. At that moment, I no longer saw an exhausted stray dog. I saw a mother who knew she couldn't go on but had to complete the final task for her pups, to entrust them to someone she believed in. No barking, no sound. But that gaze, the gaze of goodbye and trust, made me choke, my heart aching painfully. I knelt, extending my hand toward the tiny, trembling beings, and gently placed them into the prepared box. They were light, too light, just bones and breath so fragile, like spider silk. I couldn't hold it in when I lifted the last one. Tears fell, soaking my shirt, hands, and blanket. Why does it have to be like this? I whispered, unsure whether I was speaking to the mother dog, the pups, or myself. She kept looking, but this time her gaze wasn't one of despair. It was as if she was saying, "Thank you. Now I can close my eyes." I gently closed the box lid, ready to pick her up, but when I bent down, she slowly stepped back, very gently, very slowly. Then she laid her head down, curling into the ground as if she didn't need to go anywhere anymore. I froze. My throat tightened. "Don't do this. Don't give up now. I'll be back, I swear." And I did the only thing I knew then. I removed the scarf I was wearing, gently spread it next to her, then placed the small towel she had been lying on. This is a sign, a promise, a plea for you to wait for me. I left with the box in my arms, life, the future, but with each step away, it felt like my chest was being ripped in two. I drove as if in a trance, one hand gripping the wheel, the other resting on the box's lid as if to feel the fragile breaths of the 3 tiny lives inside. One thing kept repeating: I have to come back. I have to save her. My destination was the small veterinary clinic at the end of the street, where I'd taken stray cats for treatment a few years ago. When I entered, the door hadn't fully closed, and Dr. Anna, the woman in her 40s with a knowing gaze, looked at me, full of concern. 3 pups at the construction site, and the mother, she's still there, about to collapse, I said, my voice trembling. She didn't ask more questions. She just placed her hand on my shoulder, nodding. Let's go. I'll grab the first aid kit. We don't have much time. Just 10 minutes later, Anna and I were back at the old house in her car. The wind had started to pick up. The sky was a dull gray, as if warning that something was approaching. When we stepped out, Ivy was still there, still lying in the corner of the porch. But this time, she wasn't moving. I stopped breathing, hand curried to her, but a faint, weak breath brushed my hand when I bent down. She was still alive, but just barely. Anna knelt immediately, gently checking her pulse at the neck. A few seconds later, she looked up. Her pulse is weak. She's dehydrated and exhausted, but if we're quick, there's still a chance. We did everything in silence. I wrapped her in my jacket while Anna administered fluids with a syringe and opened the first aid kit. When Ivy was placed in the back seat of the car, she whimpered softly, a natural reflex. I held her hand, the frail paw, and whispered, I told you I'd come back. And this time, I'm not leaving you. At the veterinary hospital, everything happened like a storm. Monitors, IV drips, antibiotics, and heart medications. Ivy was taken into the ICU while I sat outside, the red scarf I had tucked into my jacket still warm with her scent. I didn't know how many hours had passed. The sun had long since disappeared behind the trees outside the window. I only remember Anna coming out with a look that wasn't as tense as before. She's responding well, still weak, but I believe she's a fighter. A fighter. I nodded, not because of her breed, not because she'd bitten anyone, but because she had fought with everything she had. Because of her pups, for life, for the fragile hope in humankind. I went home that night with a heavy heart, but unlike the previous nights, it was no longer despair, it was hope. Dr. Anna called with the news 2 days later. She's past the critical point. She can be discharged today. I sat silently in the car, gripping the steering wheel, trying not to cry. I went to pick up Ivy on the first sunny morning, after a string of cold, rainy days. When I walked into the recovery room, she had lifted her head. Her ears were still trembling slightly, but her eyes, those were the eyes I recognized. No longer desperate, no longer in the dark, only light. Hello, strong girl, I whispered, kneeling. Iva tried to lift herself, her legs still weak, but her tail wagged faintly. I didn't need any more words. We left the hospital together, me, Ivy, and a dream slowly coming to life. My little house was used to silence. Long nights with only the hum of the fridge, the steady spin of the ceiling fan, and me, the bachelor who had long forgotten what it felt like to be welcomed. But that night, everything changed. Ivy lay on the soft blanket by the fireplace while the 3 puppies nestled close to their mother, as if they had never been apart. Scout. I named the smallest one, the one who always slept with the yellow cloth, still clutched the treasure, as if it were an irreplaceable symbol. They didn't bark loudly, didn't jump around. They simply existed, and that was enough to make my house a home. The tiny claws tapping on the wooden floor became the sweetest alarm clock in the mornings. Scout often sat by the door, holding the piece of cloth, staring at the sunlight streaming through the curtains, while Ivy ran a lap around the backyard every morning, as if telling me, "I'm still here. I haven't fallen. I don't know when I started coming home earlier, cooking more, and opening the windows more often to smell the freshly cut grass." But I knew why. Because now I was no longer alone. Ivy was no longer the exhausted figure beneath the wooden porch. She was a mother, a warrior, a symbol of resilience. She didn't need anyone's pity. She just needed a chance, and I felt honored to be the one who showed up at the right time to give her that. I named the 3 puppies, not according to any logic, just based on the feeling I had when I first saw them playing in the sunlight. Bean, the smallest but the most stubborn, had a habit of chewing on the table legs despite me reminding him a dozen times. The way he gnawed at the wood made me both annoyed and amused, like watching a mischievous child who was too adorable to stay mad at. Maple was gentler, more shy. She liked to crawl under the bed and lie there quietly for hours. Once, I sat on the floor and propped my chin on the edge of the bed just to talk to her. "You don't need to hide anymore," I whispered. "It's safe here now." Maple didn't answer, but she reached out her paw, gently touching my hand, and I knew she understood. Dusk, the last one, was the quiet boy, always sleeping next to the old yellow sock Ivy used to keep her babies warm. The sock was now frayed at the edges, but to Dusk it was a part of his memory, a piece of survival, and Ivy, their mother, the mother I respected as a silent hero, would nudge the back door open with her nose every morning. She'd run a lap around the yard, her ears perked, eyes scanning every corner as if checking her territory, making sure that everything was still okay. Then she'd return to the porch, gently calling her 3 puppies, not with barks, but with a glance and the steady wag of her tail. All 3 would scamper after her, lying in the sun on the grass, as if it were a sacred ritual. I had lived alone for many years. This place had once been a quiet, peaceful house in a cold, lonely way. But now, every corner carried the sound of tiny footsteps, the rustling of tongues licking, the soft snoring in the night. I was no longer just Caleb, the survey technician for the old house. I was someone with a family. Family doesn't always come from blood. Sometimes it comes from a look in the dark, a starving mother dog lying silently under the porch, and an old frayed sock that holds the entire world inside. Ivy and the little ones didn't need me to be a hero. They just needed someone who wouldn't leave. And in the end, I found what I had always been missing: a place to belong. One light, rainy afternoon, while I was hanging towels on the porch, there was a knock at the door. A well-dressed man with a name tag from the City Resource Department said there had been a complaint about me illegally relocating wildlife from an abandoned property. I tried to stay calm and invited him inside, but in my head, everything turned upside down. I had no paperwork, no initial photos. There was no evidence of the cold nights, the mornings I spent hours on the porch to gain Ivy's trust. Nothing but memories, and a home that had just been patched together. "Do you have proof that they needed assistance?" the man asked, his gaze stern. I was about to answer when Ivy stepped out. No barking, no growling. She just stood there, majestic yet gentle. Right behind her were the 3 puppies. Maple stuck close to her mother's side. Bean hopped up onto the windowsill and then backed down because the floor was slippery. And Dusk, still holding the old yellow sock with frayed edges, walked slowly, as if he didn't care about the world judging him. No one said anything. No one needed to say anything. That scene was more vivid than any report. A story in flesh and bone, in the scars on Ivy's legs and the grateful eyes of her puppies, saved by her own body. The man nodded slightly. Then, without saying another word, he turned and left. I closed the door and looked back at the dogs, my family, curled up on the rug before the fireplace, breathing softly in the dim light of the falling afternoon. I once thought I came to that house to survey before demolition, but it turned out the only thing that needed to be torn down was the loneliness in my heart. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs hope. Because sometimes, hope is just a dog and an old yellow sock.